Hey guys, how's it going? There's one more card I wanted to make absolutely sure I talked about before the official release of Soul Fusion on Friday, so in a couple days from this video's release. And that card is Chaos Dragon Levianeer. It is a level 8 Dark Attribute Dragon type monster with 3000 attack and 0 defense, which means that it's searchable by both Melody of Awakening Dragon and Eclipse Wyvern. So those are some interesting things to keep in mind. The effect reads that it cannot be normal summoned / set, and must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing 3 light and or dark monsters from your graveyard. Well, this is a bit of a departure from earlier Chaos cards like BLS, Envoy of the Beginning, Chaos Emperor Dragon, Envoy of the End, Chaos Sorcerer. It requires 3, and it can be light and or dark, as opposed to having to be exactly 1 light and 1 dark. This opens up the card to a lot more different decks because they can run just light or just dark and still get something out of it. When summoned this way, you can apply this effect, based on the attributes of monsters banished for the special summon. Also, this card cannot attack for the rest of this turn. So there are 3 different effects that this card can potentially get on summon, depending on the attributes that you banish. Also, when you do this, if you choose to activate one of the effects, it can't attack for the rest of the turn. So unfortunately, one of the big strikes against this card is that you can't actually use its 3000 attack the turn it's summoned if you use one of the effects, which are all pretty great and are the real reason you'd want to run this card. Starting with only light. If you banish only light monsters, when it's summoned, you get to special summon 1 monster from your graveyard in defense position, which makes this card a great extender. It also makes it great for recovery. There's a lot of decks that I think are going to be able to use this. A big one is Blue Eyes. This is a level 8 dragon, and when you summon it, you can either bring back a level 1 tuner to make level 9 synchro, or you can bring back a Blue Eyes to overlay for rank 8, those sorts of plays. Just a very versatile card. I will say it does add another sort of brick to the deck, and that's one of the big issues with these first 2 effects, is that I think a lot of the decks that would want to run them kind of don't at the same time, just because it doesn't actually do anything for the core combo. It requires just enough setup at having to banish 3 that, you really have to consider, is that worth it? For only dark, it says that you can shuffle 1 random card from your opponent's hand into the deck. Super generic, -1 to your opponent. Obviously, taking cards out of their hand is always strong. Some of the strongest cards in the game's history were things that took cards out of your opponent's hand. Now, one thing is that it is random, so you don't get to choose. It could be a totally useless card you shuffle away. Although, that's just sort of the risk that goes with a lot of these types of cards. And for a lot of the decks that I think would run it, it's very win more. Decks like Dark Warrior that can Gumblar your opponent, if you summon Levianeer after Gumblaring them, then you would put them down to only 1 card instead of 2, which at first sounds kind of good, but what does that really get you? Really, I mean, Chaos Dragon Levianeer is a card that isn't really a part of your core combo and can therefore be bricked on. It can be part of some really bad hands, and you were probably winning without it anyway. And so that's kind of the main issue I have with this effect, is that there are no cards in the current game that can do that setup and then really want to be using that effect. So that really helps them achieve what they want to do. And it is superior to any other card you could have been running. So I don't think that Chaos Dragon Levianeer will be ran solely for that effect. I could be totally wrong, but it just doesn't seem particularly amazing, especially compared to the 3rd effect, where if you banish both light and dark monsters, you get to destroy, non-targeting, up to 2 cards on the field. One of the biggest things that this card has going for it is that it fits quite nicely into Burning Abyss. Burning Abyss already runs Blackluster Soldier and Envoy of the Beginning, and can meet the summoning conditions for this card for this effect quite easily. It can hit both monsters as well as spell and trap cards, which is something it really struggles with, because when you run Sekka's Light, you can't run cards that get rid of back row like Twin Twisters or Cosmic Cyclone because they conflict. Chaos Dragon Levianeer is a main deck monster, main deckable or side deckable, but regardless, it is a monster that you can play that can get rid of back row. Fantastic for Altergeist, Sky Striker, Paleo, all those kinds of decks. I will say that one of the big reasons you play Blackluster Soldier in Burning Abyss is because it can put a lot of damage on board. And so that's why I'm a little hesitant to say that this card is going to replace BLS, because it solves one issue, but then it sort of takes away your solution for another problem. We could see both of these cards being played at the same time, but that does feel like a lot of banishing is happening. Are you really going to have all the resources for both, especially when you have snow banishing stuff as well? 3 monsters doesn't seem like that much more than 2 at first, but when you actually start playing through it, opening 2 Levianeer is a lot. You often can't resolve 2 even if you just have like Levianeer and BLS. It feels a lot more comfortable to summon 2 BLS than it is to summon a BLS in one of these. It tends to really strain your graveyard, and that's a major concern for me. That being said, non-targeting destroying 2 cards is super strong. That's just a -2 to your opponent. You're going +2 relative to them simply for summoning this monster, which, in a vacuum, doesn't actually have that complicated of a setup. You have some light attribute hand traps, you're milling cards with Dante. Really, this card shouldn't be too difficult to summon at least one of, and it's a major swinging card advantage. And if it hits the board and resolves its third effect, I think a lot of the time against many decks, you're just going to win that game. And that's something it shares in common with Orbital Hydrolander, in that if you summon it and resolve its effect once or twice, you usually win. The real thing that's going to be sort of have to be figured out is whether this card goes in the main deck to replace BLS or if it's more of a side deck card. I think it might end up being in the side deck because it's only super good against decks that you really have a lot of stuff you want to destroy. It's not that great against Extra Links because they have nightmares that prevent destruction by card effects, but it's really good against other decks with back row or decks that don't have that kind of protection, so it might be a little too matchup specific. That's really all I have to say on the card for now, just because a lot of it is just going to come down to testing. I think great for Blue Eyes, great for anything like Lightsworn, obviously amazing for Chaos Dragons, not that the deck is relevant at all. Going to definitely be seeing some play in Burning Abyss in some way, shape, or form. It's probably going to be a lot of people playing the deck who are testing it. And I think it's really cool that there's another Chaos monster in the card pool to play with, especially one that has effects that have quite a bit of potential, I think, moving forward, even if it doesn't have the most applications in the highest tier of the meta. So by the time I make my next video, Soul Fusion will have probably already come out. I don't know if I'm going to talk about any of the other cards. I kind of want to talk about Dino Wrestler Pancratops or whatever it is. It's a pretty strong card that I think is going to see a lot of play, so maybe I'll make a video about that after Soul Fusion releases. We'll just have to see. I do really, really want to make the second episode of my guide to competitive deck building. I keep saying I'm going to do it, and then I keep putting it off, so hopefully I'm finally just going to buckle down and do it. I already pretty much know what I want it to be about. So, hopefully, I'll finally have that and you can be looking forward to it. And until then, I'll see you guys in my next video.